officials of the public service, distinguished presenters, directors of Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, staff of the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, former chairman Frank Clark, Victor Hart, Boyd Reed, who continue to keep us going, other specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, and one very special person, Mr. Reginald Dumas, who is not only a former chairman of Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute, but he is basically the person who introduced us to Transparency International and to transparency. And thank you all for being here. And it would be great if I were really celebrating the funeral of corruption as predicted by Karen. And that's what Transparency Youth does for you. And hopefully they will inspire us to believe that, in fact, we can eradicate corruption. Let us not disappoint our youth on this International Women's Day. Let us reflect on the issues surrounding the way we treat and respect mothers, wives, girlfriends, women in their own right. Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute is the national chapter of Transparency International. And we share a vision of, I quote, a world in which government, politics, business, civil society, and the daily lives of people are free of corruption. Transparency's way is to promote good governance in both the public and private sectors, and to work in a non-confrontational way with governments, the private sector, development agencies, NGOs, international organizations to combat corruption. Over the years, our beloved nation has provided the detractors with considerable ammunition for ridicule. Internationally and internally, we are increasingly perceived to be suffering from growing levels of crime and corruption. Our healthcare, public transport, and educational facilities are inadequate. Our major institutions, the police, the judiciary, etc., are being undermined. We run the risk of losing the soul of the nation. The price of oil is falling, our agriculture sector is stagnant, as is our manufacturing sector. Our economy is failing. It is generally accepted that globally, on average, and I stress globally and on average, corruption accounts for some 25% of projects' costs. In other words, 25% of the cost of a major project finds its way into private pockets, thus depriving the average citizen of 25% of potential resources. Another school, another hospital, another highway. We must eliminate corruption. We need strong legislation. We need strong institutions to enforce the legislation. We need strong leaders to sustain the institutions. We need leaders to act with integrity, and we must demand integrity and accountability from the political leaders. This in turn requires a strong judiciary, a legal system to enforce the rules and regulations, also requiring a strong and respective collective of protective services. For example, we need to lobby for enhanced legislation and infrastructure, for election campaign financing and political party funding and regulation, whistleblower protection, anti-corruption legislation, and laws to compel declaration of beneficial interests. Not simply legislation, but building the infrastructure which will make any such legislation actually work. For example, we recently had procurement legislation passed through the House. But we need the accompanying regulations and handbook. We need the establishment of the Office of the Regulator with requisite resources to make it operational. We need the public education and awareness programs that are necessary to give life to these new mechanisms. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually what I said at the end of our 2015 conference. Isn't it ridiculous that 8 days short of a year later, those same facts are absolutely true in Trinidad and Tobago? Fortunately, quoting your own words doesn't count for plagiarism. But it is sad, and I sincerely hope that at next year's conference, someone is not repeating those words, those sentiments. A few weeks ago, Transparency International released the Corruption Perceptions Index. Let me just remind you that the scores go from 0, which is totally corrupt, to 100, which is corruption-free. Karen's new world. With the top 10 countries scoring between 91 and 81, and the bottom 10 between 8 and 17, Trinidad and Tobago's 39 is nearer the bottom than the top, and definitely not close to what we all recognize as a pass mark. So do we just go back to the start of what I said this morning? Do we just accept same old, same old? The Transparency International, does the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute continue to work in a diplomatic, non-confrontational way? Or is it time to unmask the corrupt? Or we can actually turn a blind eye and let's turn to sport, recreation, fun. We are good at that. The Olympic Games will soon be upon us, so there is hope that the Keyshawn Walcott will again star. Maybe others will join him on the podium. But just a moment. Didn't Transparency International just release the Global Corruption Report Sport? 360 pages. Let me repeat, we're talking about sport. 360 pages, including cricket. Is nothing sacred? There is no hiding place, ladies and gentlemen. It is time to wake up. We, the people, must take charge. Civil society must become the true leaders. Having put political leaders in place, we must demand integrity and accountability from them. We must demand integrity and accountability from our business leaders. We must demand integrity and accountability from our sports administrators. We must unmask the corrupt wherever they seek to infiltrate. We, civil society, must now come out of our comfort zone. Is it that Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute needs to be more forthright, more assertive? I'm an eternal optimist. I still believe that West Indies cricket will improve. But not by doing the same things in the same way, and not by a cosmetic name change. A louse by any other name is still a louse. Sorry, I should have said rose, shouldn't I? It's just wrong. I know that we will achieve our goal. we will reduce corruption in Trinidad and Tobago, and we can improve our CPI score. I am confident that with leadership by example, with your collaboration, and with God's help, we will succeed in restoring the soul of the nation. It is time for action. Today's proceedings must stimulate us to clear, decisive action in the immediate future. Let us now enjoy a most productive day, and I look forward to working with you thereafter to ensure that we do unmask the corrupt and we do celebrate the current funeral of corruption in the not too distant future. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.